What's up, YouTube? Zachary Michaels here. I'm an actor, and this is An Actor Reacts. Today we'll be talking about episode 3 of We Are Who We Are. Let's discuss. Before we get started, if you're new to my channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and leave a comment below. Episode 3 of We Are Who We Are is titled Right Here, Right Now, number 3. In the episode, a fracture begins to form in the friend group following Caitlin and Sam's breakup. While Sam turns to the open arms of Britney, Caitlin is judged for spending more time with Fraser. Okay, so episode 3. Now, I mentioned last episode that it wasn't my favorite and that things were moving a little too slow, but let me tell you, in episode 3, things really started to pick up, so I'm excited to talk about it. Let's get into the recap. Okay, episode 3. A lot of stuff happened in this episode. We start off with Fraser and Caitlin on her dad's boat. Now, I assume a time jump happened because they seem to be really close at this point. And at the end of episode 2, they were still on, opposing sides, but now they seem to be the best of friends. I like their relationship. Fraser's so neurotic, and Caitlin kind of brings him down to earth a little bit, while he also helps her out and explaining trans people and gender binary and stuff. So I like what they each bring to the relationship. So they're on the boat and she's eating cookies, and she offers him some and he's like, I don't eat shellfish. That neurotic side of him, and she's like, it's just cookies, it's sugar and milk, and then she reads the ingredients and it's actually has fish in them, which ill. But I just thought that was really funny how he may be neurotic, but he has some sense, and even though she challenges him, she also gives in, I guess, in the end. And so I just find their relationship really balanced, maybe one of the most balanced relationships in this show. And like I said, time has definitely passed because they're really good friends, and he has told her about Mark, more than we know. She asked if he's ever been kissed, and he obviously hasn't. So she's like, not even Mark, and I was like, oh, she knows about Mark. So I guess that was some type of relationship or something. So I want to know the details on that. But he's like, no, it wasn't that kind of a relationship. And then he explains how he's looking for deeper things. That's why he loves poetry. It was just really good to see their relationship kind of be in this really good spot right from the start of the episode. So then they go and get off the boat, and actually another little thing where it's Fraser could help her if she would just listen. Sometimes they left the boat a mess, and that comes to bite her back later. But when they get off the boat, Fraser's like, we should have cleaned up, and she's like, no, you're just a neat freak. But they go on and they go back to their homes. And I was actually kind of surprised that Fraser was so respectful to Kid Cudi, or Richard, I guess I should say, Caitlin's dad. He's like, good afternoon, sir. And I was like, oh, this is Fraser, the one who slapped his mom in the first episode, who's an alcoholic. But, I was like, oh, okay, he can have a little respect when he wants to. But so they go back to his house, and Caitlin seems to be really intrigued by his mom's. And I think not necessarily that Caitlin is a lesbian. I think it's just something so different from what she's seen so far in her life, and she feels different than what is expected of her. So she kind of admires that energy and that freedom that those two have to just be together and be the opposite of what everybody's expecting from them. Let's see what else. So they're back in the house, and Caitlin is invited to stay for dinner, which she eventually does in a little bit, but some stuff happens between them. Sam texts her, they go to meet up, and Sam breaks up with her, and Caitlin not phased at all. She could care less, and he's like, you gonna be okay? And she's smiling yeah. And so Sam is obviously much more upset about this breakup than she is, which I could have told him she wasn't interested in the relationship immediately as I saw them. But hey, he was in love and turned a blind eye to how much she was not in love. So then he goes off, and actually Brittany sees him, and she goes and comforts him. And I don't know. The first episode, I was like, I'm really gonna like Britney, but at this point, from all the stuff that happened in this episode, I'm like, I don't know. I feel like she might be a little conniving, and maybe she likes Sam because, like, they in the like, previously on what's the show called? We Are Who We Are. They showed her and saying like that she watches Sam, and then she's like, "Oh, I watch all of them," which I believe because she has something with kind of every guy on this show. Danny, Enrique, now maybe a little something with Sam, or maybe she's just a really good friend and comforting him. Because then we do see her go meet up with Caitlyn as well, and she's kind of like feeling neglected and like, I barely see you anymore. You're always with him. Or are you guys dating? And then she invited Sam, and Caitlyn just kind of leaves. So for me, this episode, Brittany was kind of walking a fine line of actually caring about Caitlyn, but also kind of it. Sometimes it felt like she was trying to make Caitlyn look like the bad guy. So I'm not really sure how I feel. And I'll get into that more when we get to the festival portion of the episode. But I'm kind of on the fence about Britney now. Um, let's see what else there. Oh, there was also a little nugget in there that I think is definitely going to come up when Sam is going to comfort, or when Brittany is going to comfort Sam. We pass the field with the men, and they're training, and Kid Richard, not Kid Cudi, Richard says that they're slow and they have no form and they're not ready. And then that pops up later with Sarah. Um, Her assistant Jonathan tells her that the men aren't ready to ship out, and she's like, we don't have 90 days. Sometimes you just have to go ahead. And I feel like that's going to come up later, that maybe these men aren't ready to ship out to war, and she's sending them prematurely, and maybe disastrous things will happen, and she's going to, lose her position. But that's just something that I picked up on, and I don't know if I'll be able to mention it later because I'm going to get into all that festival stuff. So I want to make sure I mentioned it now. Let's see what else. And then we go back to Caitlyn and her new best friend Fraser, and they're laying on a bed, and he's showing her photos of trans men, and she's really just intrigued by it, and he's teaching her about non-binary and gender binary and all this stuff, and really opening her up to this whole new world that she had no clue of. And again, I think their friendship is just really sweet as well. The way that they depend on each other. He's showing her new things. She's lightening him up a little bit. And I like her like wanting to feel on his mustache, and he's like, no, no, stop. But like still letting her because he wants her to. Just they have this real deep connection that I just love to see, and I love that it's also platonic because I feel like that those kind of relationships don't get shown enough on TV. Anytime it's a guy and girl, it has to be romantic, and they kind of touch on that here. That like everybody thinks they're dating, but there's like no, we're not dating. We're just really good friends. So that's just I love seeing their relationship, and then they like go into the bathroom, and he's like showing her how to shave, even though he really just learned that first episode. But again, it was a sweet moment and reminded me of when Maggie was showing him to shave in that first episode. Also, it reminded me of in that second episode when Caitlyn was in the bathroom and was fumbling around with the tampons, and she felt just so uncomfortable. But then she seemed much more at peace when she was, shaving, still, laughing and giggly, but she seemed much more in herself in that moment versus how she was in the bathroom in that second episode, fumbling around with the tampons. Um, so then they go on to dinner, and this was I love a good dinner scene. So I really enjoyed this scene. Like again, seeing that neurotic side of Fraser, like he's made this traditional Italian dish, and it is just disgusting. And nobody like Sarah's being very nice, like this is interesting, but then you see her gulp down the wine because it's so nasty, and then he finally tastes it and is like, "Oh, this is disgusting." And usually his like when he goes off into his like swear like what's the word when he just goes off into like a temper tantrum, swearing and like going off, usually I'm like, oh, Fraser. But that time I was like, oh, it's warranted, he made this disgusting milk. Like, I found it funny there. um but then now I am kind of on the fence about what Sarah did with the towel and kind of making fun of him at dinner, because like I get that moms do that kind of stuff all the time, and I would get so embarrassed and mad at my mom the same way he did. Well, not the same way he did because he went a little farther than I did, but I understood his embarrassment in that moment. And I wish Sarah would have not done that, because it's like, why do moms do stuff like that and embarrass you when you're obviously uncomfortable? And even Maggie was like, Sarah, don't, Sarah, don't. But so then that just, it made me uncomfortable, and I thought he was gonna blow up in that moment. He didn't though, which I appreciated. It again showed, just like when he was respectful to Richard in that first episode, in that first scene, it showed that he can have a little restraint. He waited until Caitlyn left, and then he blew up on his mom, which was, it was too much. I, Again, their relationship dynamic is just so weird. He goes and grabs her, pulls her hair, and is yelling at her. Like that's abuse. Like, he should not be doing that to his mom, and she's just so not chill about it. She's obviously upset by it, but she doesn't do anything to actually discipline him. Like, it drives me crazy, that dynamic, and how she's just like, don't do that. How could you? And it also showed the dynamic more of Maggie in the situation. She's kind of like the peacekeeper, and she sends him off. And when he charges back, she like, stop it, Fraser, and like sends him off. And then we get to see how Fraser, or how Sarah kind of shuts Maggie out. Like, she's like, it's hard being both the mom and the dad, but it's like, well, Maggie's here. She should have a part in that as well. And she's like, you'll never know how it feels to have your own son like say that he hates you. And it's just like, you see how that kind of hurts Maggie. Like, she's been there his entire life. That's her son too. You can't take all that on yourself. And we see Sarah kind of shuts her out of that and doesn't give her that title. Like, she's been there his whole life. That's his parent as well, you know. So I love seeing that dynamic. But that whole section actually came after the section that focused on Caitlyn. So they're at the dinner, and Caitlyn leaves, and she has this nice little moment with Sarah again. She really kind of looks up to Sarah and admires how free and open she gets to be. So then Caitlyn goes home, and we actually see a moment between Danny and their dad. They're, playing basketball, having fun. We see maybe a little bond between them. But then Caitlyn comes, and Richard, Kid Cudi, just completely, leaves Danny. And I think that's a big part of Danny's resentment towards Caitlyn, is that their dad has such focus on Caitlyn, and as soon as Caitlyn came around, he just shut out Danny. And it actually hurt my heart a little bit. Like, it made me feel bad for Danny when he's like, Dad, what about the game? Like, should I just wait here? Like, that's so sad. Like, feeling that your parent doesn't love you, or that their other kid means more to them than you. I'm sure that hurts so much. Just not even just parent, just like in life, when you feel like you're underappreciated, that hurts. And in that moment, he felt that from his dad, and I'm sure that just made him feel bad. And with what we learned later on in the episode, there might be a reason for that, while he feels like, Richard loves Caitlyn more than him. But I really thought that scene was a nice touch. But then Caitlyn comes, and Richard is like, come here, get a flashlight, let's go. and he marches her out to the boat. And again, like I said earlier, she should listen to Fraser, and he yells at her about the mess and is like, "Clean it up. What is this?" And then in the midst of yelling at her, he calls her like young lady, and she's like, "You've never called me that." And he's like, "Well, you've never, left my boat a mess." So we're kind of seeing their relationship kind of breaking apart as well as her and Fraser develop their friendship and the group kind of breaks apart. Those two are growing closer together, but the rest of her old life, as she gets more in touch with Harper, is kind of falling apart. And I thought that that was a really important moment, that like, "You've never called me young lady," because again, Caitlyn's still figuring out who she is. She's still figuring out like how she identifies, and her dad, who she has this deep bond with and who she's always been kind of this like tomboy with and really connected with him, he is now calling her young lady, something that she doesn't connect to. So that just makes them separate even more. And another little tidbit that I really love about this show is how they overlap everything. Like, we when Caitlin leaves from the dinner and goes to the family, we hear the shouting in the background of Fraser and his two moms. They're fighting and they're arguing, while we're focusing on Danny and him like, "Hey dad, should I wait here?" And them like marching off to the boat. Like, we hear all that in the background, and then when we jump back to that scene, it's like, oh, this is what was happening. So I love how they layer all that stuff in. Just really great filmmaking. And then since we're back on Fraser, I did leave something out. That next scene, he like wakes up in the middle of the night and back to this toxic relationship. He goes and he is like hyperventilating, having a panic attack, I assume. And he goes to his mom and he's like, crying, and he gets in bed with them, and she's just like soothing him in the middle of the night, which on surface level necessarily isn't a bad thing, but it's just with how unhealthy the rest of their relationship it is, that just looks like, oh, like they the waters are so muddied in their relationship. They need a clear like mother daughter relationship, that they need boundaries that they just don't have. And I thought, I didn't realize at first at the beginning of that scene that he was the one like hyperventilating. I thought that like he woke up in the middle of the night and was like gonna go to the bathroom, and he heard his mom's having sex, and he intentionally went in there to break that up, because I was like, this is too much. Like, this is unhealthy to the max. But then I realized that he was the one that was doing like all that like moaning and stuff. Thank God, because that would have just been too much for me. Like, interrupting them having sex, like that's like some real Oedipus stuff. But thankfully it wasn't. But that's that scene. And then let's see, anything else on that night? Do do do. Um, oh, there was a little glimpse into Kid Cudi, like his closed offness, or his like not immaturity, but his like that he has a really closed mind. He's like ironing his pants, and he's asking his wife like, do you think they iron? And he says like, oh, one has to be the man and one has to be the woman. I couldn't imagine it any other way. And that's just a real like closed-minded view of what a homosexual relationship has to be like, assuming it has to have a heterosexual like ground, like blueprint to function, to be right. And that makes me think he's super close-minded, and as Caitlyn discovers more of who she is and her identity, that's going to be a real rift between the two. But that's all that happens that day, and then we get on to the next day, which is the festival, and a lot of stuff happens at the festival. That's where the meat of this episode is. There was another little tidbit too, when in the morning when Sarah's going to work, we see that there's Hillary Clinton on the TV at what I assume is the Democratic convention, when she was, nominated officially as a Democratic nominee in 2016. So that gave me for sure, like, okay, this series is taking place in 2016. Because the last episode I wasn't sure because Trump and the MAGA hats and stuff, but this is, I'm pretty sure, around 2016 before the election. So just a little thing to set us and where we are in time and what exactly is going on. Okay, and now we get into the festival. There was a bunch going on at the festival, so I'm gonna like do it in chunks of character groups, so I don't have to keep jumping back and forth. And we're gonna start off with Maggie and Jenny. Now, so Maggie ends up going to the festival with Jenny and her friends. They get there, and Jenny realizes that she left Richard's cake in the car for his team. She thinks it's really important to him, and she has to go and get it for him. So he it boosts the team's morale. So she goes back to the car to get the cake, and Maggie ends up going with her, and then they end up going on this journey throughout the day of really connecting with one another on kind of being unappreciated in their homes and their relationships, really. And they seem to have a really intense connection. I don't know necessarily if that's going to be a romantic relationship. Maybe it might end up being, but I think they're able to really connect to one another because, again, they just don't feel appreciated in their relationships. And I think they're going to be a really good, like, support system for each other. And if it does go romantic, I wouldn't mind that because they seem to care about one another, even though they're really just getting to know each other in this episode. Um, like they bond over being ethnic. Sarah, or not Sarah, but Maggie's Brazilian, and Jenny's Nigerian, and she talks about her family not liking Nigerian food, and they only want American stuff. And uh, Maggie appreciates her food and it's like, oh, I love this dish. Could you cook it for me sometimes? So it was just really cool to see them again just connect with one another and kind of get that that touch and that connection that they've been missing in their lives recently. And at one point they go into a church and Jenny is saying how calming it is and how she feels good there, and she doesn't know what her God feels about it. And then I get the confirmation that they at least were Muslim because Maggie asked her, "Are you Muslim?" And she's like, I was a lot of things previously that I'm not anymore." So that definitely gives me that. With when it goes to Danny and his like connection with Islam is him like trying to connect to something deeper that his family had previously that they don't anymore, and they're trying to be real Americanized, and that explains more the MAGA hats and like Jenny said, like they only want American food. Like I feel like Richard's really trying to push all that stuff out and be as American as he can be because he's a soldier and he wants to make America great again, So the MAGA hats and the pushing of the religion and Danny's struggles is all like coming to more light, especially in this episode and the stuff that we find out. And like speaking of Danny, we find out that he might not even be Richard's. And I don't know if he knows that. I don't know if Richard knows that. I don't know who exactly knows about that, but it's definitely something that could be why Danny feels that he doesn't connect to any of his family, why he thinks that, Caitlyn is more loved than him, why he despises her so much, because one, he's already got this religion that he's trying to connect to that the rest of the family is trying to push off, and now this might not even be his dad, and he doesn't feel loved in that family. So definitely really interesting. I loved seeing Maggie and Jenny's connection, and I hope that continues to grow. And again, even if it doesn't go in a romantic direction, I would love to see them just keep supporting each other and being there for one another. But then they eventually go to Richard and they take him the cake, and his tug of war team is probably called something else, but I know it is tug of war. But his team ends up losing. Side note: Kid Cudi's legs are very skinny. That's just something that I know because he had on those like tights and he was at the front of the tug of war team, and I was like, I don't know, I don't feel like his legs have enough power to be like at the head of this team. But that's he's an actor or a rapper, I guess, rapper and an actor. So I'm not expecting him to be super buff. I don't know. I just maybe they shouldn't have highlighted that because it took me out a little bit. I was like, well, is he a soldier? Well, should he be at the lead of this? Is he the leader? Because he doesn't look like he works out that much. But anyway, who am I talking about? I'm skinny as hell. But anyway, they're doing the tug of war competition, and his team ends up losing, and he's angry about it. Uh, Jenny tries to cheer him up with the cake, and then he is like, "Oh, didn't I tell you the team is we're going out for pizza tonight? Thanks anyway." And one, he could have taken the cake anyway. They could have had pizza and then eaten the cake, but it kind of goes to more of show that like disconnect in their relationship. He's like, "Oh, I thought I told you," which it feels like he definitely didn't, because Jenny tries to cover and she's like, "Oh, he definitely told me. I just forgot." And Maggie makes her mark, "Oh, he must really love Caitlyn," because while Jenny's there, like Jenny's actually there and she has this cake and she's trying to give it to him, and he just kind of brushes that off and is like, "Where's Caitlyn?" And that's more going to like his and Caitlyn's relationship deteriorating, because he's like, "Oh, she always used to come to see me, and now she's not there, and now she's with Fraser and being again more in touch with her Harper side." That's the deterioration of their relationship, and then Maggie and Jenny go off, and in the final moments of the episode, they share the cake together. But Richard goes and he's with the team, and he's just distracted the whole time because he's thinking about Caitlyn, and he's thinking about how close they used to be, and how she wanted to join his team, and how seemingly lost that. And that was a touching moment. Well, not touching, but sad, I guess, because I don't know. There is that time when you kind of not outgrow your parents, but sometimes as a teenager, you kind of take them for granted, and they take you for granted and how they treat you sometimes. So to kind of see that from the dad's perspective, it was sad, and he seemed to be really distracted because there ended up being like a whole fight breaking out, and he's just sitting there thinking about Caitlyn, not moving at all. So yeah, sad moment, but realistic. I again just love how based in realism this show is. But that's all I got on Maggie and Jenny. That's all I got on Richard. Now we can get into like the teens, the group in the show. Um, so their story starts at the parade, and they're kind of on two opposing sides. Apparently, it's Fraser and Caitlyn on one side of the street, and then the rest of the group on the other. And now this is where I come with my like I'm not sure on Britney's intentions, because she she like waves at Caitlyn and waves her over and tells her to come. But then as soon as Caitlyn comes and she says hi, um, Sam storms off, and then Brittany rolls her eyes at Caitlyn. It's like you just called her over. All she did was come and say hi. And then Brittany like runs after Sam, and she's like, I just wanted us all to hang out. I didn't know she was gonna be such a bitch about everything. But it's like, what exactly was she a bitch about? You called her over, she came and said hi. Sorry she's not like weeping, but so it just makes me kind of uneasy about like what are Britney's intentions, because that feels to me like she's trying to play the thing of, oh, I'm everybody's friend, while secretly trying to like turn everyone against Caitlyn. But her and Sam end up leaving, but Danny blows up at Caitlyn and calls her a bitch, and it's like, you look what you did. You're breaking up my group, and kind of just how you're taking away Dad's attention and everything. Um, and I'm kind of on Caitlyn's side on this one, because she's like, I started this group. This is my group. Because honestly, most of the group is, her age. Like Sam was her boyfriend, who's also 14. Brittany's her best friend, who's also 14. Craig maybe not, but Craig is older. Like Craig's a freaking soldier. Like Danny doesn't seem to have any friends of his own age. He was friends with his sister and her two best friends, and then an older dude who's a soldier. So if I was to say it's anybody's group, I would say it's more so Caitlyn. She has the more connection to the rest of them. But anyway, he blows up at her. Fraser tries to step in. He grabs Fraser and attacks him. Danny definitely has some anger issues, some pent up aggression that he needs to get out in some type of way, and preferably not attacking people. But he's like, I'll kill you. I don't care who your dad is or who your dad is. I don't care who your mom is. And Craig again has to be the peacemaker, come and separate everything. And Fraser and Caitlyn end up going off, but we're gonna focus on Danny for a second and his anger issues. Uh, Craig tries to, calm him down. And later in the day, we see he and Craig have kind of, separated from everybody and they're just alone getting drunk. And Danny kind of starts talking about some suicidal thoughts. And Danny's definitely got a lot of anger and aggression, but he's got a lot of depression in there as well for like all the reasons that I've mentioned so far in the past 3 episodes. Like, I don't know if he knows that Richard might not be his dad, but I feel like you can sometimes feel stuff like that. I don't know if Richard knows either, but again, you can kind of sense it, and he maybe feels that like Richard doesn't love him the same way he loves Caitlyn. He's trying to find religion, but the rest of his family is kind of pushing it off and judging him for that. He doesn't have a good relationship with Caitlyn. His friend group is now breaking up. He doesn't feel like he fits in anywhere and feels like he sometimes just wants to end it all. And I hope that he gets help. I hope that we see again a self discovery journey of him and him kind of coming to terms with all his feelings and just finding someone he can let all that out to, because Craig isn't really the one, because he just kind of he threatens him. He's like, if I hear you talking like that again, I'm gonna beat you up. But like that's not what he needs. He needs a space where he can really open up and let all those feelings out in a healthy way, because he's not doing anything in a healthy way at this point. Let's see what else. Oh, I also, can you let me know if you understand the joke? Like when Spence or when Danny is like, you ever feel like you don't fit anywhere, and then Craig is like, I'm a soldier, bro, and then they both start laughing. The joke I think just went over my head. I watched this episode again twice. I didn't get it either time. So let me know what the joke means. Like, what does him having a soldier have to do with? Is he saying because I'm a soldier, I don't fit in anywhere, or because I'm a soldier, I always have a family? Like, let me know which one that is, because I was kind of confused on that joke. But I did really like that scene overall, and Danny kind of trying to let out his repressed anger and his depressed feelings. But I don't think Craig threatening him is the right way to get over that, because it's just he's gonna repress more, have more anger issues, and maybe end up doing something really bad, which hopefully he gets help before it comes to him actually trying to take his life. Okay, so then Fraser and Caitlyn. So after Danny attacks them, they kind of go off and go on their own. A quick thing, again, I love the music in this show. That Time Will Tell song by Blood Orange that they were listening to on the bench. I went and downloaded that, and then I found that they actually have a soundtrack of the music that they listen to on the show on iTunes. They have both the score and all the songs that play in the episode. So I hopped into that. Love the music. It just puts me in such a like moody, alternative, vibey mood. So go listen to that stuff if you haven't. Just really good. But so they're on the bench listening, and then um, what's his name? Fraser is kind of talking about how Danny was really strong, and Caitlyn's like, you can. He's like, I'm never gonna be that strong. She's like, you can say that again, but it's good. So I think she likes, Fraser's more feminine energy mixed with his masculine, because it reminds her of her feminine and masculine energy. And then he comments on how it felt weird when Danny grabbed him, and I thought that was funny because he after he says it, he's trying to like skirt away from it, and she's like, "What do you mean?" And then he's like, I saw you look at that girl's ass. And she's like, I don't look at girls' asses. And she's like, do you look at my brother's ass? So maybe he has a little crush on Danny too, but I don't think it's a crush. I think he's just maybe never been. He's exploring himself too. He's maybe never been grabbed by a guy, and him being grabbed by a guy like felt different than he was expecting, and maybe it excited him a little bit. He didn't quite go into detail, but it sparked something in him, and then that gets him to talking about Jonathan, which that's something that I forgot to mention earlier in the episode. Fraser, when we're talking about him and his poetry, and how he likes it because it's deeper, and every sentence means something, and he's looking for stuff that means something. He ends up connecting with Jonathan on poetry because he takes his book back to the library, and Jonathan has been waiting for that book, and they have a quick little conversation, and once again Fraser is kind of head over heels, and then he ends up in this moment telling Caitlin like, Jonathan knows my name. It's like, everybody knows your name, but he really feels like he has that connection with him. And then he's like, just because my moms are lesbians doesn't mean I'm gay, which factual, it does not. But she's like, just because they are doesn't mean you can't be gay either, which again, factual. I just really love these two and their relationship, how they both kind of challenge each other, but really bring out the best, and kind of they bring out each other's true selves, and they're able to just be who they are with one another. And they talk about how people think that they're dating. Um, and he's like, no, I think maybe they just think that we're weird. And then he's like, we're never going to kiss, which I like. Because again, like I said earlier, it's just like, I like seeing their platonic friendship no matter what everybody else on the outside sees. And I love how they're there for one another and just teaching each other new things. And I think they're really gonna help one another, and I hope like Danny gets help like that, and same with like Maggie and Jenny. I like seeing the different support systems in this show, especially when it comes to Fraser and Caitlin, and how they're able to grow with one another. But then we end the episode with Fraser seeing, or for these two at least, with Fraser seeing his mom Sarah dancing with Jonathan. Now, I'm sure that's gonna lead to much more trouble in the coming episodes. Like, one, he has that big crush on Jonathan, even though he isn't quite acknowledging it. It's quite obvious that he has a big crush on Jonathan. He's kind of head over heels, and he already has this really weird, complicated, unhealthy relationship with his mom. So seeing her dancing with this guy that he likes in this really like seductive way, and she kind of waves, I'm sure that just like really set him off, and you see it in his face. He's like brewing. So I'm sure their relationship is just gonna get a lot worse before it gets any better. So I'm just really excited to see where that goes. um and I think that's most. I think I touched on everything in this episode. There was a lot. If I left anything out, let me know below in the comments. But I think I touched on all the major plot points. Really enjoyed this episode. So let's get into my final thoughts. Okay, episode three. Like I said, this one really picked it up from episode two. Like, the ball really got rolling this episode. There was so much going on that, again, I'm pretty sure that I might have missed a few things throughout. So leave all that stuff below in the comments. But really, really good episode. A lot of character development. We learned a lot of new things. I'm excited to get into episode four now, and since I'm behind, I can hop right into episode four and watch it and catch up, because it was a really, really good episode, and I'm just excited to see more. Like, what's gonna happen with Danny? Is he gonna find somebody to open up to? Is he gonna be able to find a healthy way to let out this anger and all this suppressed depression and stuff, or is it gonna come to him like trying to commit suicide, like he alluded to in this episode? I know from like the trailers and stuff, Caitlyn's eventually gonna cut off her hair. So I'm excited to see when that comes up and see the kind of rift that it builds between her and Richard, because I know that we saw in this episode how kind of close-minded he is and how much he misses her though, and how much he misses the connection that they had, and he's probably going to want things to go back to the way that they are, but Caitlyn is developing and changing, so things are never going to be the same. Hopefully Fraser and his family get, or really Fraser and Sarah can get to a more healthy spot, but I don't know if I see that happening before this series is over. Maybe they can get a little better, but they've got a lot of work to do because it's super unhealthy. And I love Maggie and Jenny's relationship. I want them to get more depending on each other. And I wouldn't be mad if it got a little romantic. Maybe it'll get romantic. They'll fall into it and feel like, we can't do this. We can't break up our families. But then they'll kind of go back to their own situations and demand more respect. Because there was like that moment of, you know, don't you wish you could have a child of your own? And don't you wish you could have something that maybe wasn't just Richard's? So I hope that they both are able to grow and really step into the relationships as like, hey, this is what I need from you, and if you don't provide it for me, I'm gonna leave. Really a lot of development in this show. It's not just a coming of age story for like the teens. Everybody's really coming into their own and hopefully can develop a lot more in the remaining episodes. I'm really really big fan of this show. Has all the ingredients that I love, and they're mixing them together really well, especially in this episode. Oh, and Miss Britney, we'll see which guy she chooses. She has like her pick of the litter at this point. She Sam, Enrique, Danny, like the girl can apparently get any guy she wants, but hopefully she can get her act together as well, because there's got to be something there with why she's stringing along all these guys, what's going on in her home life. So I'm just really interested to dive more into these characters, because they're all really well developed. They all have really interesting stuff to get into. But yeah, I think that's all I got on episode 3. Right here, right now, number 3. Really enjoy this one. I'm excited to get into episode 4. Leave a comment below. Let me know your thoughts on this episode. Let me know if I missed anything. Let me know if I interpreted anything wrong. Leave all that stuff below in the comments. Don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends and family, and subscribe to my channel for more content like this. Thanks for stopping by. See y'all next time.